The date was 24th of December 2016. United Nations had adopted a resolution calling on Israel to halt Jewish settlement activity on Palestinian territory. President Obama had instructed UN Ambassador Samantha Power to abstain from voting on the grounds that the Israeli government's continued support for expanding Jewish settlements could undermine any prospect of eventually reaching a two-state solution to this simmering conflict. Netanyahu was furious. And vacationing at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, Donald Trump has said, "The United States has such great potential, but right now it is just a club for people to get together, talk, and have a good time. So sad." 4 years and 5 months have passed since, but nothing has changed. The United Nations is still just a club for people to get together, talk, and have a good time. They backstabbed Israel then, and they have backstabbed Israel now. Hi and welcome. This is TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. And I'm your host, Atul Mishra. In this video, I will tell you about the uselessness and blatant bias of the United Nations and Netanyahu's bold response to the resolution. Let's begin. There are some things in the domain of international relations that are as clear as water. And the fact that the United Nations Human Rights Commission, or the UNHRC, is entirely anti-Israel is also an undisputed fact. A day after the UN rights chief said that Israeli forces may have committed war crimes in Gaza territory, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has criticized the decision by the UN Human Rights Council to probe abuses in the Palestinian territories and inside Israel, and in his speech, he has destroyed the UNHRC's shameful observations about Israel. Calling the decision shameful, Netanyahu said in a statement, "This is yet another example of the UN Human Rights Council's blatant anti-Israel obsession." He added, "This travesty makes a mockery of international law and encourages terrorists worldwide." One thing that can be said about Benjamin Netanyahu, and that even his political adversaries accept, is the fact that when push comes to shove and the country needs a leader that can put Israel's point resolutely, he always comes as someone that can be relied on. The UN Human Rights Council decided on Thursday to establish an open-ended international investigation into the violations surrounding the recent Gaza violence, as well as the systematic crimes in the Palestinian territories and Israel. The resolution, which received the support of 24 of the Council's 47 members, will lead to the unprecedented scrutiny of human rights violations and their root causes in the decades-long Middle East conflict. However, Israel and Netanyahu realize the extreme biases the UNHRC holds against their country and people, which is why instead of giving any credence to the report, Netanyahu straight up destroyed UNHRC's shameful observations. Other bodies of the United Nations, which are not filled with representatives with inherent anti-Israel bias, have already called Hamas's spade. When Matthias Schmel, the Gaza Strip director of the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, told Channel 12 on Sunday that Israeli strikes during the recent Hamas-Israel conflict were precise and smart, he was merely expressing the fact as he saw them. Schmel was queried about the IDF's claim that its military operations on terrorist targets were particularly precise in an interview with journalist Arad Nir. "I am not a military expert, but I would not dispute that. I also have the impression that there is a huge sophistication in the way the Israeli military struck over the last 11 days. So that's not my issue. I have had many colleagues describe to me that they feel that in comparison with the 2014 war, this time the strikes felt much more vicious in terms of their impact. So yes, they didn't hit, with some exceptions, civilian targets, but the viciousness, ferocity of the strikes was heavily felt." And when these statements absolve the IDF and Israel of every observation that the UNHRC made, why should Benjamin Netanyahu pay any heed to these biased observations? After 11 days of war between Israel and Hamas, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has proven himself to be the protector of Israel. The opposition within Israel was so far seemingly gaining an upper hand over Netanyahu's Likud party. However, the events over the past few days have once again reminded the Jewish people of the grim realities which stare them in the face, and also how the region at large continues to remain hostile against Israel. Within Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu's political capital and heft have risen by leaps and bounds. He successfully protected the Jewish nation from a variety of enemies looking to take it down. And with the latest statements against the UNHRC's biased observation and its blatant anti-Israel observations, he has once again proven his commitment towards the state of Israel and its people.